Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Kof Yod Gimel, the last daf of this fantastic Masechet. The Braita said, Terumot Yirakevu. If there is an Ir Nidachat and there's Terumah in the city, then you have to leave it just to decay. On the one hand, you can't burn it with the rest of the property of the city because it's Terumah, and Terumah has a certain amount of holiness, and therefore it would not be respectful to just burn it. On the other hand, a Kohen cannot eat it because it is from Irani Dachat, and so it has to be destroyed. One cannot get benefit out of it. So you can't eat it, you can't actively destroy it, and therefore you passively just let it rot. Amar Rav Chisda, Lo shanu ela teruma biyad Yisrael, aval teruma biyad Kohen, kevan demamonehu tisaref. Rav Chisda limits the law of the Baraita, it's also the law of the Mishnah, and said, this is only true if the terumah is in the hands of Yisrael, the farmer who originally collected it, and he separated the terumah from his produce, and so he can give it to a Kohen. He's deciding who to give it to. Then it's Irani Dachat, he owns it, so then you have to let it decay. However, if the terumah is already in the hands of a Kohen, the farmer gave it to a Kohen. Even if the Kohen is in the city, nevertheless, let's say the Kohen is righteous, and so he lives, this belongs to the Kohen. And since it's his own property, ironically, although he can eat it, it's holy, nevertheless, it has to get burnt. In other words, when it's in the hands of the Israel, then the Israel cannot eat it. So it's not owned by the Israel. So Israel, okay, you are it doesn't matter if he's a Rasha or Sadiq, because we nevertheless destroy his property. It's property that's in the Irani Dachat, and then we will tell him, okay, this property, what is this? Israel says, listen, it's not mine. I can't eat it. I can't get any benefit from it. So that's why we're not going to burn it. On the other hand, nobody can eat it, so we leave it to decay. But if it was given to a Kohen already, then the Kohen can eat it. So that means it's like his own private property. Private property of a Kohen or anybody who lives in Irani Dachat does get burned, despite the fact that it's holy. It's a matter of being private property. That's why it gets burned. When it's in Israel, then it's not his own property. It's Mamon Gavoa, and therefore it does not get burnt, but also obviously not eaten because it belongs to Israel. He didn't give it to the Kohen yet. Okay, Mativ Rav Yosef. We have a challenge to this statement of Rav Chisda. Ma'aser sheni v'chitpei HaKodesh yiganzu. It's a challenge from our Mishnah that says, Ma'aser sheni, which a farmer takes, and he has to take it to Jerusalem and eat it there. A farmer is not allowed to eat it outside Jerusalem. Once he's in Jerusalem, then he can eat it. And also, holy scrolls, they have to be put away or buried. Now, Maaser Sheni in the hands of a regular Israelite is the same as Terumah in the hands of a Kohen. Just like Maaser Sheni, regular Israel can eat it, right? He owns it. It has a certain level of holiness in that it's required to eat it only in Jerusalem. It has to be tahor, just like Terumah. Also, the Kohen has to be tahor to eat it, but otherwise the Yisrael can get financial benefit from it and can use it and eat it in Yerushalayim. So really, Maaser Sheni in the hands of Yisrael and Terumah in the hands of a Kohen are the same status, and yet the Mishnah says that Maaser Sheni is buried, whereas Rav Chisda, you said that Terumah in the hands of a Kohen gets burnt. But if that gets burnt, then Maaser Sheni also should get burnt. You should consider it private property. But we don't say that. We say it should be buried. Ela I itmar hachi itmar. Amar Rav Chisda, Lo shanu ela terumah biyad Kohen. Aval terumah biyad Yisrael tinaten laKohen shebe'ir acheret. Rather, we're going to modify Rav Chisda's statement. If he said anything about this along these lines, then he must have actually said the following. When does the Mishnah and the Braita say that terumah, you leave it to get to decay? That's only if it's in the hands of the Kohen. Because if it's in the hands of the Kohen, what is he going to do with it? We're not going to burn it because it's not respectful, but he can't eat it because it's from Irani Dachat and can't benefit from it. So therefore, we let it rot. Aval terumah biyad Yisrael tinaten laKohen shebe'ir acheret. But if it belongs to Israel, so it's not his property, the Israel, he All the Yisrael, the farmer who grew it and separated the terumah, he just has the right to decide which kohen he's going to give it to. But he can't sell it and he can't benefit from it. Therefore, he has a chance to give it to a kohen outside Ir Nidachat. Don't give it to a kohen in the Ir Nidachat, because then it'll go to the kohen, and then you'll have to let it decay because the kohen cannot benefit from it because the kohen himself lives there, and that'll be his property. He can't benefit from the property. We just don't burn it because out of respect. But if it's still in the hands of Yisrael, and then the city is given a verdict as Ir Nidachat, okay, this terumah right now still belongs to Gavoa, so let the Israel give it as a gift to a kohen who lives outside the city, whose property does not need to be destroyed, and give it to that kohen, and that kohen will eat it. That's what Rav Chisda said. Okay, very good. Now, Tananatam, there's a braita. We're quoting this braita because we're going to challenge it. Isa shel ma'aser sheni petura min hachala. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Hachamim mechayevin. The braita says that if you have a dough that's ma'aser sheni, and now, so you took ma'aser sheni, which a regular farmer is allowed to eat. So he brings it to Jerusalem, he takes his grain and makes a big dough, and the question is, does he have to take challah from it? So Rabbi Meir says, no, you don't have to take challah, because this is considered holy, even though the farmer himself is eating it, but because it has to be eaten in tahara with restrictions, it's considered holy, and since it's holy already, the whole thing, you don't have to take challah from something holy. Hachamim mechayevin. Chamim say, no, the farmer has to take a piece of dough as challah and give it to the kohen. Amar Rav Chisda machloket b'maaseh sheni b'Yerushalayim. Did it be Meir sabar maaseh sheni mamon gavoahu? V'Rabbanan sabre mamon hejotu. Aval bagbulin divrei hakol patur. Rav Chisda says this machloket is only regarding maaseh sheni when it's in Jerusalem. When you're actually in Jerusalem, that's where the machloket is. Rabbi Meir says, this is mamon gavoa. This belongs to heaven because it's maaser sheni. It has holiness. So therefore, you don't have to take challah because it's already holy. Challah is making something chulin. You have to take a piece that will be holy for the kohen. But this is already holy, so you don't have to take it. Rabbanan say, no, it belongs to the person himself. And therefore, you have to take challah because in Jerusalem, the owner can eat it, use it in the regular way, as if it's just regular food. And so therefore, he has to take challah. That's where the machloket. Aval bigvulin, but let's say he's making the dough outside of Jerusalem. Okay, he's not allowed to eat it outside Jerusalem. He has to eat it in Jerusalem, but he can make the dough. So he's making the dough, he's baking outside of Jerusalem. According to everyone, even Rabbanan would say that one does not have to take challah, because when one is outside of Jerusalem, it's prohibited to him. And since it's prohibited to him, why is it prohibited to the Yisrael farmer? Because it's holy. You can't eat it. Well, if it's holy, if he can't eat it, he can't use it, then it's not his property. If it's not his property, belongs to Gavoa, it's already holy, then he doesn't have to take challah outside the land of Israel. Everybody would agree to that. Good. Now that we know that, it's relevant to us because we're going to challenge it from our Mishnah. Mativ Rav Yosef. Maaseh Sheni v'Chedvei HaKodesh yiganzu. Says here Maaseh Sheni and Holy Scrolls, one has to bury it. B'may askinan, what is the case? Ilema b'Yerushalayim mi'av ya'ir nidachat. Is it talking about in Jerusalem? Wait a second. Can Jerusalem be an ir nidachat? Let's say the majority of the people living in Jerusalem follow avodah zarah. So then, do we destroy it like an ir nidachat? We don't. V'hatanya asara devarim nemru b'Yerushalayim v'zo achat mehen ena na'asit ir hanidachat. There are 10 laws that apply to Jerusalem, and one of them is that the law of ir hanidachat does not apply to it. Even if everybody in the city would worship avodah zarah, we don't destroy the city as an idachat. We don't kill people by sword. We'll judge them individually, but not as an idachat. Therefore, with this Mishnah, our Mishnah is talking about idachat, and it says Maaseh Sheni in an idachat. You have to bury it. Obviously, it's not talking about when it's in Jerusalem, because Jerusalem cannot be an idachat. Rather, it must be that it came from a different city, not Jerusalem, that was deemed to be a ir hanidachat, and then it was brought into the walls of the city of Yerushalayim. It was brought in later. Okay, so that must be the case, right? And that's when you have to bury it? No, that can't be either, because kelatuhu mechisot. Once you bring Maaseh Sheni into the walls of Jerusalem, the walls grab it, kalat, and don't let it go. This is referring to a law that once you bring food, maaseh sheni food, into Jerusalem, you're not allowed to take it out of Jerusalem again. Even though beforehand, okay, you can wait, you don't have to bring it in right away. You have to bring it in eventually and eat it there. Once you bring it in, you can't take it out anymore. Since you can't take it out anymore, even if in the meantime the city that it came from was deemed to be an inanidachat, there is no obligation, in fact, no possibility. You're not allowed to take it out and go burn it over there. Since you wouldn't be allowed to take it out and burn it over there, so then you wouldn't need to bury it either. Now it's in Jerusalem. It's a safe zone. And it's part of the property of the city of Yerushalayim, or to be in there, and you wouldn't have to bury it, you would be able to eat it. So that can't be the case of the Mishnah either. Elalav bigbulin vekatane yiganzu. Rather, it must be talking about Maaseh Sheni that was not brought to Jerusalem at all. It's not from Jerusalem, it was not brought to Jerusalem. It's still in the city that was called an Irani Dachat. That must be the case of the Mishnah. And yet, what does the Mishnah say? That you bury it. You bury it even though it's outside the land of Jerusalem. This contradicts Rav Chisda, because Rav Chisda said that if it's not in Jerusalem, outside, then everybody would agree patur, because it's considered holy. If it's considered holy, then you would not need to bury it. And so now we have a contradiction. On the one hand, Rav Chisda said that if it's outside the city of Jerusalem, Maaseh Sheni, you don't have to bring challah because it's holy. If it's holy, then it should be exempt from the laws of Irani Dachat and not be destroyed, right? Just go take it to Jerusalem later. And yet, over here it says that you have to bury it, which means it's not holy. It's considered the property of the owner. You're just not going to burn it because we want to be respectful out of its holiness. So this challenges Rav Chisda's ruling. So we say, Lo le'olam da'ir anidachat v'aseku legava. No, indeed, our Mishnah is talking about a case that it was from Irani Dachat, this Maaseh Sheni, and we did bring it to Jerusalem. So, okay, you brought it to Jerusalem. I thought, well, in that case, then you can eat it. So then it should stay in Jerusalem and be able to eat it. No, this Maaseh Sheni that became tameh. Since it became tameh, well, we can't do anything with it. We have to bury it. That's why we're burying it. We're burying it not because of the law of Irani Dachat, but rather because once you bring it to Jerusalem, it can't escape Jerusalem. It's in a safe zone, but we can't eat it because it's tameh. So we have to bury it. Okay, now the Gemara is going to ask in a few lines, wait a second, if it's tameh, and that's why you're burying it, then this has nothing to do with Irani Dachat. This would be true for any Maaseh Sheni, even if it just came from a regular city, not Irani Dachat, and you brought it to Jerusalem, become tameh, you'd have to bury it. So why is our Mishnah, which is in the context of Irani Dachat, giving this law? Okay, the Gemara is going to ask that in a couple of paragraphs, but in the meantime, we're going to ask some other questions. Ve'lifrekeh, דאמר רבי אלעזר, מנין מעשה שני שהתמשה פודין אותו אפילו בירושלים, תלמוד לומר לא תאכל שאתו ואין שאת אלא אכילה, שנאמר ויישא מסעות מאת פניו. Well, if it became tameh and it's in Jerusalem, then why not redeem it? Even in Jerusalem, I brought some apples into Yerushalayim, $100 worth of apples, and now I'm going to eat that. I was planning to eat it in Yerushalayim. It became tameh. Okay, no problem. Redeem it. Take $100 of coins and say the holiness of Maaseh Sheni will go on the apples, and then the apples become holin, like you would, like same as redeeming if you lived far away. And then with that money, you can go and buy something else. And how do you know that you are allowed to do redemption even in Jerusalem? Because Rabbi Elazar says, how do you know that Maaseh Sheni that became tameh, only if it became tameh. If it didn't become tameh, you can't redeem it in Jerusalem. If you live near Jerusalem, you have to bring the fruit itself into Jerusalem and eat that fruit. You can only do pidyon if it's far away and it's too hard to carry. But he has a chidush. How do you know that if it became tameh, then you can redeem it even in Jerusalem? Because it says it's too much to carry, that you cannot carry it all. But the word se'et, which literally means carry, also means to eat. As it says in the pasuk in Bereshit, Vayisa masot me'et panav, he took portions of food from before him. And so therefore, as long as it says, if you cannot eat it, even if you're in Jerusalem, but you can't eat it because it's tameh, then you're allowed to redeem it. So in this case, why not simply redeem it? Okay, I understand. Maaser sheni, it became tameh, bury it. No, don't bury it. Why you want to bury perfectly okay food? It's edible food. Just because it became tameh, it's maaser sheni. So redeem it and then eat it as chulin. So the answer is hachab meskinan belakuach. Oh, we're talking about food that was bought with money that was already used to do pigeon. In other words, I live far away in Haifa. I have some fruit at home. I can't carry it all the way to Jerusalem. So I redeemed it for money. I have $100 worth of coins. I come to Jerusalem, and in Jerusalem, I buy some olives. And then, okay, I want to eat those olives, but those olives became tameh. Well, now this is already bought with redemption money. So that's why I have to bury it. But that's not a sufficient answer, because we say, Velifrekeh ditnan halakoch bekesed maaser shenitma yipadeh. So redeem it anyway. As the Mishnah in Masechet Maaser Sheni says, if you bought produce with money of Maaser Sheni, and that produce became tameh, so redeem that also. Keep redeeming it. Redeem it again. I bought something else, and that became tameh. Okay, redeem that and get the money in until you buy something that remains tahor, and then eat it betahara. So we could still do it, and therefore there's no need to bury it. Why not redeem it? And the answer is, Rabbi Yehuda damar yikaber. Oh, we're following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says, no, you cannot redeem it. It has to be buried. And so that's the opinion of our Mishnah also, yikaber. Okay, so we answered that question, but now we go back to the better question that I mentioned before. If the case of Maaser Sheni, and our Mishnah here in Masechet Sanhedrin is talking about a case of produce that was from a Ida Nidachat, they brought to Jerusalem, and it became tameh. And we're following Rabbi Yehuda that says you can't redeem it, you have to bury it. Then why does it need to be a case of Ida Nidachat? Even if it came from a regular city, and you brought your Maaser Sheni to Yerushalayim, and it became tameh, you'd also have to bury it. So why would it mention Maaser Sheni specifically in this Mishnah? If there's no difference in the law from the fact that it's from a Ida Nidachat or from a regular city. Ela le'olam betahor. So reject that entire line of reasoning. In fact, we're talking about tahor produce. Uchgon dineful mechisot. We're talking about a case where the walls of Yerushalayim fell down, or some of them fell down. Uchederaba damaraba mechisa lechol deoraita liklot derabanan v'chi gezurabanan ki itnehu lemechisa ki letnehu lemechisa la. And we're following the opinion of Rava. Rava said that the walls of Yerushalayim are for the law of eating Maaser Sheni. That is considered a deoraita law. In other words, if I bring Maaser Sheni produce into Yerushalayim and the walls are up, then that means I'm allowed to eat it. And even if the walls fall down later, I'm still allowed to eat it no matter what. No problem there. But in terms of the law of keeping it in, the law that I'm not allowed to take it back out, that law is only midrabanan. It's only gezerah. We don't want you to take the produce that you brought to Jerusalem back out, because then you might forget about it and not bring it back in and eat it. So therefore, the rabbis say a law, listen, if it's in Jerusalem, you can't take it back out. But when the rabbis made a gezerah, they only made the gezerah when the wall is up. But if the wall falls down, then the gezerah does not apply. Therefore, this Mishnah is talking about a case where the walls fell down. So this produce is from an Ir Nidachat. Someone brought it to Yerushalayim, but the walls in the meantime fell down, and so now the law of taking it back out does not apply. So if the walls were up, then the law would be, in fact, as we said before, that you can't take it out, so it's protected, and you can eat it in the walls of Yerushalayim, and you don't send it back to Ir Nidachat. But if the walls fell down, then you were permitted to take that back out. And since it's from Ir Nidachat, you have to take it back out, bring it to the Ir Nidachat, and so therefore you cannot eat it in Yerushalayim, because from Ir Nidachat it has to be destroyed. Now when we destroy it, we're not going to burn it out of respect for its holiness, so instead we bury it. And that's how we explain that section of the Mishnah and the Baraita. Next part of the Mishnah, Kitbei HaKodesh Yiganzu. If you have holy scrolls that are in a Ir Nidachat, then those holy scrolls cannot be used anymore. These were owned by Ovdei avodah zarah, reshaim. So that's it. You can't read from them anymore. We're not going to burn them because they are holy. They have Hashem's name in it. So we bury it. Matnitin de la Rabbi Eliezer. Our Mishnah is not the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. The Tanya. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Kol ir sheyesh ba afilu mezuzah achat, ena nasit ira nidachat. Rabbi Eliezer says something astounding. If there is a city in which there is even just one mezuzah anywhere in the city, then we do not proclaim it to be ira nidachat. Why? Shenemar v'sarafta ba'esh et ha'ir ve'et kol shelala kalil. It says you have to burn in fire the city and everything in it. But if there is a mezuzah, then we can't burn it. We can't burn everything in the city because we're not allowed to burn a mezuzah. As the pasuk says, don't do that to Hashem. The beginning of the pasuk is, go to the things of avodah zarah, destroy them, burn them. But don't do that to the things that belong to Hashem. A mezuzah is a holy thing to Hashem. You're not allowed to burn it. So one mezuzah will save the entire city. Now, according to the author of the Mishnah, it does not save it, right? Even a Torah scroll, you would just bury it and then burn the rest of the city. If there was a mezuzah, even 100 mezuzot in the city, so you take the mezuzot, bury them, they're like holy scrolls, and then burn everything else. So obviously the Mishnah is not authored by Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer thinks that one scroll, one mezuzah, anything like that will save it because you have to burn everything, and if you can't burn one thing, then you burn nothing. And the rabbis say, just bury it and then burn the rest. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'chule. The rest of the Mishnah says that according to Rabbi Shimon, Hashem says, if you implement judgment against the ira nidachat, I will consider it as if you made an olah sacrifice before me because you destroy the whole city, and that is like an olah sacrifice. After that in the Mishnah, there's a machloket. This is what we're going to focus on right now, between Rabbi Akiba and Rabbi Yosef HaGalili. The question is, this prohibition of not rebuilding an ira nidachat, how exactly does it apply? The pasuk says two phrases. Vayeta tel olam lo tibaneh od. There's misvat aseh, it should be a heap forever, and a misvat lo ta'aseh, it shall not be built again. So the question is, what does this exactly prohibit? According to the Yosef HaGalili, you cannot rebuild it at all, you can't use it at all, not even for a garden, not even for a park. No use at all. According to the Rabbi Akiba, it means you can't build it as it was before with buildings and houses. But as long as you're not building it up, you can turn it into a garden. Now, we're going to analyze this machloket. Perhaps Rabbi Akiba and Rabbi Yosef HaGalili are arguing about the principle of Rabbi Abin in the name of Rabbi Ilah. Amar Rabbi Abin, Amar Rabbi Ilah. Kol makom she'atam oseh kelal ba'aseh, ufrat belo ta'aseh, and daninoto bichlal ufrat. He says, anytime you see a kelal, a general rule that is formulated as a misvat aseh, a positive commandment, and then a perat, a particular detail that's formulated as a lo ta'aseh, we do not treat it the same way as a klal ufrat. Well, what's a general klal ufrat? There's many places in the Torah where it will say a general category followed by a specific example. And the rule is when you have a klal ufrat, a general category, and then a detail in the Torah right after it, then we focus only on the detail. The generality is there just to introduce the detail, and so the law only applies to the specific example in the perat, not to the klal. So, in general, we have a klal uprat, we say only what's in the prat. However, Rabbi Ilah says that does not apply when it's a mitzvat aseh and a mitzvat lo ta'aseh. So that's exactly what we have here. First it says, tel olam, let it be a heap forever. Being a heap forever, that's a very general commandment. It's actually a positive commandment. Make sure it's a heap. And that would say, you can't do anything at all with it. Just leave it alone as a heap. And then lo tibaneh, well, that's actually more specific. It says don't build it up, which sounds like don't make houses. So if you would treat this as a klal uprat, well then you would say klal uprat, we focus only on the prat, which means it should not be built up. You can't make houses on it, but you can make it a garden, because it just says you can't build it up, and we ignore the tel olam. So Rabbi Akiva would be following the klal uprat, focusing on the prat, ignoring the klal, and saying, I can't build it up, but I can make it into a garden. Whereas Rabbi Ilah, which is we're about to say, Damar demor it le Rabbi Abin, umor let le Rabbi Abin. So one master, that's Rabbi Yosef Galili, he would agree with the statement of Rabbi Abin in the name of Rabbi Ilah, and he would say, you're right. You know what? I think we should treat these separately, because one's a mitzvah taseh, one's a mitzvah lo taseh. We treat it not as a klal uprat together, but separate things. And therefore, according to the Yosef Galili, there's actually two different commandments here. There is one commandment, the mitzvah taseh, to leave it as an unkempt pile. Don't do anything with it. And that would mean that if one would make it into a garden, he would violate a mitzvah taseh. Now there's mitzvah lo taseh also, not to build buildings on it. If you'd build buildings on it, then you'd be violating a lo taseh of lo tibaneh od, and the mitzvah taseh v'haita tel olam. The lo taseh only applies to building buildings, but the yaseh applies to everything. So Rabbi Yosef Galili would follow the methodology of Rabbi Abin, and he would say that we treat the klal and the prat here as two separate laws, and therefore everything is prohibited. Whereas Rabbi Akiva would not follow this, and he would treat our pasuk like a klal uprat, in which case only the perat applies. So there's only a prohibition against building buildings, but there is no prohibition against using it as a garden. So is that true that this principle is under review? Is the machloket between these two Tanaim? We answer no, not necessarily. La dekula amait lehu de Rabbi Abin. Maybe everybody agrees that we treat these as two separate clauses, not a klal uprat. Mor sabar od legamre mashma, or mor sabar od lechama shehayta ena nibnet ava naasit hi ganot ufardesim. The question is, how do you interpret this word od? Lo tibaneh od. It shall not be built again. So when do we say again? Does that mean not at all? Don't build it at all again. Zero. That would be a Galili. Can't even use it for a garden. Whereas Rabbi Akiva says the word od means don't build it up odd again as it was before, where there were buildings and houses, but to build it a little bit so they can use it for gardens and orchards, that would be sufficient. That would be okay. That would be permitted. And so that's how Rabbi Akiva could learn these pesukim, even though it's two separate clauses, not a klal uprat. But the question is how one interprets that word, odd. Tenor banan. Hayu ba'ilanot tilushim asurin, bechubarin mutarin, shalir acheret ben tilushin bechubarin asur. Now, a braita relating another law regarding ir hanidachat. If in the ir hanidachat there were trees that were detached from the ground, detached, so they're just lying on the ground, but they're not attached, or maybe they're used as poles for building. So those are prohibited, and you have to test property, and you have to take that and bring it to the city square and burn it. That's part of the property. But if they are trees that are attached, they're live trees attached to the ground, then you leave them alone, and you don't have to destroy them, because we said earlier, remember regarding the hair, you says you only burn that which the only thing you have to do is gather it and then burn it. But if you have to detach it like hair or like a tree attached to the ground, that extra step you don't have to take. That's not required. So we leave the live trees alone attached to the ground. And then the Braita continues and says, the trees of another city, I don't know what we're talking about, what other city, whether they are attached or whether they are not attached, they are prohibited. So we ask, what other city are you talking about? Amar Rav Chisda, Yericho, Dichtiv, Ha'ir, Cherem LaHashem, Vayashpa Yoshua ba'et hahi, Lemor, Arur ha'ish lifnei Adonai asher yakum bana et ha'ir hazot et Yericho, Bibchoro yasedenna, Ubesa'iro yasib delateha. The other city, it's almost like too terrible to even call by name. Like you don't want to mention it. Acher. That other city, that is referring to Yericho, where after Yeshua and his army destroyed Yericho, they blew the shofarot, the walls fell down. Yeshua wanted to make it a monument forever, dedicated to Hashem. And so he says, no one is allowed to rebuild the city. This city will be a cherem, will be devoted to God, and he made a vow at that time. And he says, cursed will be the person before God who gets up and builds this city and builds Yericho. Notice the double language, Bana et ha'ir hazot et Yericho. We're going to learn from this in a minute that this means that you're not allowed to build the city of Yericho, even if you call it a new name. You say, oh, I'm giving it a new name. This is now called New York, not Yericho, and you build it. Not allowed. And how about if you go to somewhere else? You go to some other place down in the south of Israel, and you build a city. You call it Yericho. That's also not allowed. That's what we can learn from the double language. That's what we're going to see in a minute. Anyone who does and comes and builds Yericho, he will lay its foundations with the death of his firstborn, and he will set up the gates, the last thing that you do, with the death of his youngest. Meaning, if you try to do that, anyone who tries to do that, all of his children will die in the process. And so, the city of Yericho, since it was made a cherem, totally forbidden. Everything in it was forbidden. The dead trees and the live trees, the attached trees and the detached trees are all prohibited. That's what the Baraita was talking about. Tanya, lo Yericho al shem ir acheret, velo ir acheret al shem Yericho tichtib. Banachi el bet ha'eli et Yericho, ba'aviram bechoro yiseda, u'pisgub se'iro hesib delateha. A Baraita elaborates on what we just said, probably interpreting the pasuk as we did, the double language, that Jericho is prohibited, even if you call it a different name. You come to Jericho, you give it a new name. Oh, I'm not building Yericho, I'm building a different city. See, I gave it a new name. No, you can't build that spot ever. And also, you can't take another city and call it Yericho and build it up. Either way is prohibited. And according to this midrash, Chiel went, according to Peshat, he actually went and built the actual city of Yericho, and he caused his death of all his sons. This midrash is assuming that Chiel built a different place and just called it Yericho. So, but that's also prohibited. So Chiel, from the house of Eli Ha-Eli, that could be just the name. Also, Eli actually means cursed. So that from the house of the cursed one, because he became cursed because of what he did. He built Yericho, and when he laid the foundations, his oldest Aviram died, and he didn't learn his lesson. And by the time he finished and set up the gates, his youngest son Segub died. And so we see that one is not allowed to build Yericho or any city that is called Yericho. Tanya, Ba'aviram bechoro rasha lo haya lo lilmod. Biskub se'iro haya lo lilmod. Braita teaches that Chiel, it's understandable that he did not learn his lesson when his firstborn died. It calls him Aviram, his firstborn, Rasha. We'll see what that means. We understand that Chiel wasn't necessarily going to learn his lesson from that because maybe his firstborn just died. Maybe he was evil, whatever. But once his youngest died, then he should have realized that, you know why this happened? Because I'm building Yericho, and this is a fulfillment of the curse of Yehoshua. Everybody knew the curse of Yehoshua, so it should have been obvious to him that that's what happened to his family. Aviram uskub my abud, my kamar. We ask a question about this Baraita. Avram and Zgub, what did they do? Why are you calling Aviram a Rasha? What's going on here? And what is the point of this whole Baraita? Hachi kamar, ba'aviram bechoro haya lo lilmod lo to rasha biskub se'iro. This is what the Braita means to say, that Chiel should have learned from the death of his firstborn Aviram, that Rasha, the word Rasha is not going on Aviram. It's not that Aviram was the Rasha, but rather Chiel. Chiel, that evildoer, he's an evildoer because he's rebuilding Yericho, so he should have figured out from the death of his firstborn that the reason why his lastborn died is because he did this terrible sin, but he just never learned his lesson. Now a question on the pasuk itself. From the fact that it says Aviram is the oldest, don't I know that Seguv is the youngest? Right now we're assuming, let's say he only has 2 kids. So obviously Aviram is the oldest, then Seguv is the youngest. So why does the pasuk say Segub his youngest? Just say Segub. I know he's younger. This teaches that he had many sons, and they all died from the oldest right down to the youngest. So really, in that case, Chiel should have realized after one son is dying after the other, he should have taken pause and said, maybe this is because I'm building Yericho, and he should have stopped before he finished. But he was really thick-headed and didn't get the message. Now, Achav Shushbine Hava. Achav, King Achav, the evil king, was the close friend of Chiel. He was his groomsman. Ata ihu ve'Eliyahu lemishal bishlama betamya. After Chiel lost his kids, Achav and Eliyahu Hanavi both came to pay him a shiva call. Ya teveka amar dilma ki melat Yoshua hachilat lo Yericho al shem ir acheret velo ir acheret al shem Yericho. Now Chiel is sitting trying to figure out, why did all my sons die? And he said, oh, maybe it's because of the curse of Yoshua. And maybe Yoshua meant not only someone who builds Yericho itself, but not only Yericho in the name of another city. If you build Yericho, call it New York and say, okay, I'm not building Yericho, I'm building New York over here. But it's not in the same spot, that's not allowed. And also, it's not allowed to go elsewhere and build any city that's called Yericho. That's why Chiel at first didn't realize it, because he was building a different place. He just called it Yericho. He liked the name. And so that's why he didn't put it together right away. But now that his sons died, he's sitting, Shiv'ah, and he's saying, maybe when Yoshua said his curse, he meant even if it's in a different spot, you can't build a city and call it Yericho. And so Chiel finally realizes after it's kind of too late. Amar Eliyahu in. Eliyahu says, indeed, that is true. Amar le'ashta levatata de Moshe la'aka mekayema tichtiv v'sartem v'abadetem v'gomer uchtiv v'charaf Hashem bachem v'asat hashamayim v'gomer v'ahu gabra okim le'avodah zara al kol telem v'telem v'la shabik le'mitra de mezal miskad levatata de Yoshua tamideh mekayema. So Chiel said, it must be because I built Yericho. Eliyahu said, yes, indeed, that is what Yoshua meant. And then Achav comes and says a total cynical statement. He says, look, the curse of Moshe in the Torah, in Kiryat Shema, that was not fulfilled. Because what does it say in the second paragraph of Shema? If you go astray and you worship Avodah Zarah, then Hashem will be angry and stop the heavens from giving rain. Meanwhile, that person, Achav is referring to himself as that person, I go and I put Avodah Zarah in every furrow throughout the land, all over the place. And yet, there's plenty of rain. The rain is so plentiful that I can't even go worship my Avodah Zarah because there's flooding. We don't even know what to do with the abundance of water. And so you see that Moshe's curse never came true. I worship Avodah Zarah and nothing happened. The rain keeps coming. Well, if the curse of Moshe is not fulfilled, you think the curse of Yoshua, the student of Moshe, is going to be fulfilled? Nah, that's not why this happened. Whatever reason why this happened, Chiel, sorry about your kids, but it's not because of the curse of Yoshua. Now Eliyahu Hanavi heard that, and he got really incensed. Miyad, v'yomer Eliyahu tishbi mitoshavei Gilad, Chai Adonai Elohei Yisrael, im yeh tal umatar vegomer. See, Eliyahu, it's one thing that, okay, someone is violating Avodah Zarah. Okay, maybe he feels bad about it, he can't help it, it's good for the economy, he feels like he has to do it. All right, we can try to maybe tolerate a little, but now, look what Achav is boasting. I could do Avodah Zarah. Hashem doesn't do anything about it. The curse of Moshe is ineffective. I can get away with anything I want. That Eliyahu, he said, no, and this is now really being too much, to really past the point of just absolute rebellion by Achav. Eliyahu says, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. And therefore he makes a swear and says, by the life of Hashem, the God of Israel, I swear there will not be rain except according to my word. Eliyahu Navi says, that's it, there's not going to be rain. And so he prayed to Hashem, and Hashem gave him the key to rain. So Eliyahu was in charge of rain. Hashem wasn't going to stop the rain, because you see, if you stop the rain, it doesn't only punish Eliyahu, it punishes everybody, the good and bad alike, the rich and the poor alike. Everybody's going to suffer with no rain. So Hashem didn't do it, but he says, Eliyahu, listen, you're the Navi, and if you made a swear, okay, here's the keys to the rain, you figure it out. וידבר אדוני אליו לאמור, לך מזה ופנית לך קדמה ונסתרת בנחל כרית והערבים מביאים לו לחם ובשר בבוקר. Now, it says regarding Eliyahu that Hashem came to him and said, leave here, go eastward and hide yourself in this place, Wadi Kerit. Sounds like karet. You have to cut yourself off because everybody wants to kill him. And the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning. Every morning, the ravens would bring him food. Mehecha, amar Yehuda amarav, mebe Where'd they get the food from? Turns out from the slaughterhouse of Achav, which is really ironic, because Achav is the one that Eliyahu cursed, and it's Achav and his wife. They were looking for Eliyahu to kill him, and so he's hiding out. And where does he get food from? Secretly, the raven brings him food from their very slaughterhouse. But apparently they were kosher, or maybe because the raven miraculously brought it, they would only bring the kosher meat. Now after a while, the water stopped. The wadi dried out because there was no rain to fill it up. Now once Hashem saw that there was a lot of suffering in the world, and Eliyahu Navi didn't care. He just wanted to punish Achav. He's singularly focused on that. And he's ignoring the plight of all the other people, but Hashem is not. Hashem says people are really suffering. Okay, we got to get Eliyahu to undo his vow. Even Hashem gives in to Eliyahu. He's a great Navi, and he's bound. So Hashem devises a plan to get Eliyahu to give up the keys of rain so that Hashem can bring the rain again. And so Hashem tells Eliyahu, listen, I want you to go to Sarefat, and you're going to meet someone there. Okay, a few Pesukim later, it says, he goes there, he meets a woman, the woman gives him food, takes care of him for a while. And then after some time, the son of that woman, the owner of the house who was feeding, taking care of Eliyahu, her son got very sick. And now this child was going to die, or already died, and Eliyahu felt that the woman was all upset and asked Eliyahu, help, I need your help, you need to intervene. And so Eliyahu prayed to Hashem to get the keys of Techiyat HaMetim so he can revive the child. Now, they say, the tradition says that there are 3 sets of keys up in heaven that Hashem controls directly and does not give to a messenger because they're so important. And that's the keys regarding childbirth, whether a woman is going to successfully give birth to a child, the keys to rainfall, and the keys to resurrection of the dead. Hashem decides that only. Now, Hashem made an exception regarding the rain and gave it to Eliyahu. But now, if Hashem gives over also the keys to Techiyat HaMetim, what will people say? Oh, look, there's 2 in the hands of the student, Eliyahu Navi, and the master, meaning Hashem only has 1. What are you going to make? It's one thing to give over one of them that really Hashem never gives, but at least Hashem is in charge because he has a majority. But how will it look if the student has the majority of power over these 3 things in the world? So sorry, you can't have both the keys to rainfall and Techiyat HaMetim. And so Hashem says, if you give me the keys to rainfall, then I'll give you the keys to resurrection of the dead. And Eliyahu agrees because he wanted to revive the kid. So he gives up the keys to the rainfall, and then Hashem tells Eliyahu, go and appear to Achav because I'm going to give rain, and so you have to revoke your oath. So this was all a plan of Hashem. Hashem realized that the people are suffering too much; they need rain, and so he got Eliyahu to himself voluntarily give up the keys to the rain by bringing him to this woman, making the son sick, and then Eliyahu would feel so bad that he would give up the keys for rain in order to get the keys for Techiyat HaMetim to revive the child. Tarashahu Gilila Kamed Rav Chista. Mashad Eliyahu Lemadavar Dome Legabra de Tarke Legale Vabede Le Mafteche. The certain Galilean taught before Rav Chista. You know what? This is a parable. Eliyahu, you know what he's like? He's like someone who slammed the door and locked his keys inside. Now he can't get it out. And so to Eliyahu, he had the keys and he used it to lock the gates of rain. And then he gave up the keys, he didn't have any more. So Eliyahu himself could not open the rain anymore. Rather, he gave it to Hashem. Hashem had to start the rain again. And so Hashem now told Eliyahu, listen, it's not in your hands anymore. I'm starting the rain, so you better go and tell Achav about it. Darash Rabbi Yosef besipori, Abba Eliyahu kapedan. Havara gilimete gabe, Ichse mine telata yome vela ata. So Rabbi Yosef gave the following public lecture in Sipori. He said, Father Eliyahu, talking about Eliyahu Navi with an honorific, right? The great Eliyahu, he was a kapdan. He was a difficult person. He was very particular, indignant, right? Easy to anger, and he wouldn't give up. Very stubborn person. That's what he says about Eliyahu Navi, which, look, we could see his character trait before, right? He gets angry, understandably angry, by Achav, who says, see, Hashem does, Moshe's curse doesn't come true. Eliyahu got angry, but so angry, so indignant that he stopped rain for the people, for the whole country for a long time. You see how indignant Eliyahu was. So this is what the rabbi said. Now, the Eliyahu Hanavi used to come to Rabbi Yosef every day to visit. However, once Rabbi Yosef said this about Eliyahu Navi, Eliyahu did not visit him for 3 days. He was really upset. Well, he called me a bad name, Kapdan. Finally, after 3 days, Eliyahu came to visit Rabbi Yosef again. And Rabbi Yosef says, how come you haven't come in the past 3 days? What happened? Kapdan karit li. And the Eliyahu Navi says, you called me a kapdan. You called me a stubborn, particular person. I was upset at you. Hadekaman deka kapid mod. And Rabbi Yosef says, exactly. What you did here before me shows that you are in fact difficult. The fact that I said difficult. Kaptan is not like the worst thing to be. I said that you're indignant, that you really care, you're very particular, and then you were very particular about the fact that I called you particular. So much so that you stopped talking to me for 3 days. So it's like if you tell someone, I think you're easily insulted. Another person says, me? Easily insulted? How dare you say that? I'm not easily insulted. Well, the fact that you're insulted by someone saying that shows that you are easily insulted. So that's a pretty funny story. The Mishnah continues, quoting the pasuk all the way at the end. Actually, we have to quote the whole pasuk to understand it. That nothing from the city of Ir Nidachat should stick to your hands, meaning it's cherem. That's it. You can't take anything from the destroyed city. למען ישוב אדוני מחרונה ונתן לך רחמים וריחמך והרבך כאשר נשבע לאבותיך, so that Hashem will go away from his anger. We're just talking about anger in the story of Eliyahu, and give you mercy and have mercy on you, and he'll make you great. And so do not benefit from the property of the Ir Hanidachat, and then things will be good. So we learn, Kol Zeman Shem Ba'olam, Charonaf Ba'olam, Bechule, the Mishnah taught that as long as there is evil or evil people in the world, Hashem's anger is going to still be in the world, because if there's people that go and grab on to the things of Ir Hanidachat, and they continue in the ways of those evil people, so Hashem will be angry. How do you stop it? By there not being evil people, then Hashem will give mercy. That's what the rest of the pasuk says. Man Reshaim, Amar Rav Yosef Gannabe. What kind of wicked people are we talking about? What sin did they do? We're talking about thieves, and that makes sense in context. We're talking about people that go and take property from Ir Hanidachat that they're not allowed to take. Taking something you're not allowed to take, that's called stealing. Tenor Banan, Rasha Bala Olam, Charon Bala Olam, Shenemar, Bebo Rasha Ba Gambuz Va'im Kalon Hirpa. Braita teaches that when a wicked person comes into the world, not necessarily when he's born, he's not wicked yet when he's born, but when he becomes wicked and he starts acting in the world, God's anger comes into the world, as it says in Mishleh. When the wicked comes into the world, contempt also comes, and with ignominy, reproach. And when a wicked person is eliminated from the world, then good comes to the world. You got rid of that problem, as the pasuk says in Mishleh. And when the wicked perish, there is jubilation. Everybody's happy that they don't have to deal with the persecution from this guy. Sadiq niftar min ha'olam ra'a ba la'olam shneimar ha'sadiq abad ve'en ish sam alev ve'en chesed ne'asafim be'en mevin ki mipnei ha'ra'a ne'asaf ha'sadiq. When a righteous person dies from the world, then that means evil is coming to the world. As the pasuk says in Yeshaya, the righteous perish, and no man lays it to heart. The merciful men are taken, none want to understand why that due to the evil that the righteous, that's due to evil that the righteous is taken. Why are the righteous people dying from the world? Either because there was evil and then they died for the sins of others, or because evil is coming and Hashem says, okay, I'll wait till they die and then so I don't have to see the evil that's coming. So a righteous person dying from the world, then we lose out on that person's merit. And this is not good for the world. Sadiq ba'ala olam, tova ba'ala olam, shenemar, ze yinachamenu ma'asenu, misibon yadenu. But when a righteous person comes into the world, then goodness comes for the whole world. It's not just that for that one righteous person, but he brings in lots of good for everybody else around him. As it says regarding Noah, this is one who shall comfort us for our work and the toil of our hands. When a great person comes, he could bring great comfort to others and great redemption. The whole Seder Nizikin is in fact called Yeshuot, and so we hope and pray that through the merit and through the learning and the new understanding that we got from Masechet Sanhedrin and all of the laws about justice and righteousness that are run throughout this Masechet, we also can see Zeh Nachamenu, we will see the comfort of redemption. Hadran Allah Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek uselik ala Masechet Sanhedrin hazakim uberuchim.